A Mafia boss visited his son's grave and found a nurse kneeling there with her daughter, whispering, "We have to visit Daddy." He froze. His son died 3 months ago with no wife, no child. Yet the little girl had his eyes, his birthmark, his everything. And she just called his dead son Daddy. The rain hit Vincenzo Moretti's black umbrella like bullets against armor. 3 months. 90 days since Marco's casket had been lowered into this wet earth, and still, the pain felt fresh as an open wound. Vincenzo's polished shoes sank slightly into the muddy path as he approached his son's grave. The cemetery was empty. Who else would be foolish enough to visit the dead in weather like this? He preferred it that way. No witnesses to see the great Vincenzo Moretti, feared across 5 boroughs, reduced to a grieving father. But as he rounded the marble angel marking the Moretti family plot, he stopped dead. Someone was already there. A woman knelt at Marco's headstone, her thin jacket soaked through, dark hair plastered to her skull. Beside her, a small child, no more than 4 years old, sat cross-legged in the mud, completely oblivious to the rain. The little girl was arranging flowers, purple irises, at the base of the grave with the focused intensity only children possess. Vincenzo's hand instinctively moved toward the gun at his hip. No one knew about Marco's resting place except family. He'd made sure of that. The funeral had been private, the location undisclosed. So, how did this woman? "It's okay, sweetheart," the woman whispered, her voice barely audible over the downpour. "We can go soon. Just let me say goodbye." The child looked up at her mother with enormous eyes. Even from 15 feet away, Vincenzo could see they were an unusual shade, golden brown with flecks of green. His breath caught. Marco had eyes exactly like that. "Mama," the little girl said, tugging at her mother's sleeve. "Why are we visiting Daddy? You said Daddy was in heaven." The woman's shoulders shook. "I know, baby. I know what I said. But this is different. Daddy." Vincenzo's mind reeled. Marco had never mentioned a child. Never mentioned a woman. In the last year of his life, Marco had been distant, secretive, but Vincenzo had assumed it was business-related stress. Marco had been working to expand the family's legitimate holdings, distancing himself from the bloodier aspects of their empire. But a secret family? The woman stood abruptly, finally noticing she wasn't alone. Her eyes went wide with recognition and terror. "We have to go," she said urgently, grabbing the child's hand. "Right now, Ari. Come on." But the little girl, Ari, pulled away. She ran to the headstone, pressing her small palms against the cold marble. "Bye-bye, Daddy," she whispered. "I love you." Vincenzo felt something crack inside his chest. The woman, Lena, he'd later learn her name was Lena, physically lifted the child and started walking quickly toward the parking lot. Too quickly. The kind of quick that meant she knew exactly who he was. "Wait," Vincenzo called out. She walked faster. "I said wait." His voice carried the authority of a man accustomed to obedience. Lena broke into a run, the child bouncing in her arms. Vincenzo followed, his longer strides easily closing the distance. As he got closer, he saw something that made his blood run cold. On the back of the child's neck, just visible above her collar, was a birthmark. Not just any birthmark, a distinctive port wine stain in the shape of a crescent moon. Marco had the exact same mark in the exact same place. "Stop," Vincenzo commanded, and this time something in his voice made Lena freeze. She turned slowly, clutching the child protectively against her chest. Up close, he could see she was younger than he'd thought, maybe 30. Pretty in an exhausted, worn-down way. A nurse's ID badge dangled from her jacket pocket. St. Catherine's Hospital, Lena Torres, RN. "Please," she whispered. "Please just let us go. We don't want anything." "We never wanted anything." "That child," Vincenzo said quietly, dangerously. "She called my son Daddy."
No.
"No, you don't understand." "Then make me understand." He stepped closer, and Lena instinctively backed up against her car, a beat-up Honda that had seen better days. "You're crying at my son's grave." This little girl has his eyes, his birthmark, and she calls him her father. You're going to tell me what Marco is to you, and you're going to tell me right now. Tears mixed with rain on Lena's face. The child, Ari, had started crying too, frightened by the angry man looming over them. Marco saved her life, Lena finally said, her voice breaking. That's all. He donated blood when she needed surgery. He visited us a few times in the hospital. He was kind to her. That's why she's 4 years old, Mr. Moretti. She doesn't understand death. She just knows the nice man who brought her coloring books and made her laugh isn't coming back. It was a reasonable explanation. Almost believable. But Vincenzo hadn't built an empire by accepting surface explanations. You know who I am. Everyone knows who you are. And yet you came here anyway. To a private cemetery. To a grave whose location isn't public knowledge. He leaned in. How did you find this place, Miss Torres? Lena's eyes darted to the side to tell. She was hiding something. Before she could answer, Ari wriggled in her mother's arms and dropped something, a small card, laminated and worn from handling. Vincenzo picked it up before Lena could stop him. It was a child's drawing. Stick figures, a man, a woman, a little girl. At the bottom, in Marco's distinctive handwriting, were the words, "For my brave little fighter. Get well soon. M." The date was from 2 years ago. Give that back, Lena demanded, but there was no force behind it. Only desperation. Vincenzo stared at the card, then at the child, then at Lena. 2 years. Marco had known this woman and child for at least 2 years, and never said a word. Get in your car, he said finally. Go home. Lock your doors. Lena blinked in confusion. What? I'm letting you go. For now, he stepped back, tucking the card into his pocket. But Ms. Torres? This conversation isn't over. Not by a long shot. She didn't need to be told twice. Within seconds, she had Ari buckled into a car seat and was speeding out of the cemetery, her taillights disappearing into the rain. Vincenzo stood there for a long moment, letting the rain soak through his expensive coat. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Tony, he said when his head of security answered. I need you to follow a gray Honda. License plate. He recited the numbers he'd memorized. Don't approach. Just watch. I want to know everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to. And Tony? Find out everything there is to know about a nurse named Lena Torres. He hung up and walked back to Marco's grave. The purple irises the woman and child had left were already wilting in the rain. What were you hiding from me, son? Vincenzo whispered to the headstone. What secrets did you take to your grave? The rain was his only answer. But Vincenzo Moretti was a patient man, and patient men always found their answers, one way or another. Vincenzo's town car idled at the cemetery exit, engine purring like a satisfied predator. Through the rain-streaked windshield, he watched Lena's Honda swerve slightly as she accelerated onto the main road. She was panicking. Good. Panicked people made mistakes, and mistakes revealed truth. Follow her, he told his driver, Marcus, a former Marine who'd been with a family for 15 years. Keep 3 cars back. I want to know where she's running to. But even as they pulled onto the road, something gnawed at Vincenzo's instincts. The way Lena had looked at him, not with the calculated fear of someone involved in his world, but with the raw terror of a civilian caught in something she didn't understand. And that child, Ari, with her innocent confusion and Marco's unmistakable eyes. His phone buzzed. Tony, already working fast. Boss, the Honda's heading toward Bridgeport. Working class neighborhood. I've got Sal and Jimmy tailing from a distance, like you asked. Good. What else? Running her name now. Lena Torres, age 32, single mother, works double shifts at St. Catherine's in the pediatric ICU. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Bank accounts basically empty. She's living paycheck to paycheck. Not someone connected to his world, then. Not someone with resources or protection. Vincenzo's jaw tightened. If Marco had been involved with this woman and child, why keep it secret? Marco knew the family would protect what was theirs. Unless Marco was protecting them from the family. The thought sent ice through Vincenzo's veins. 20 minutes later, Lena's Honda pulled into a decrepit apartment complex where laundry hung from balconies despite the rain and graffiti decorated the walls. Vincenzo watched from a block away as she practically ran from her car, carrying the sleeping child wrapped in her jacket. Marcus, park here. I'm going in. Sir, you want backup?
No.
Just watch the exits. Vincenzo approached on foot, moving with a predatory silence that had served him well in his younger, bloodier days. He reached Lena's Honda just as thunder cracked overhead. The car was unlocked. Foolish, but then again, what did she have worth stealing? He opened the back door where the child's car seat sat. Crushed Cheerios on the floor, a worn stuffed rabbit, coloring books. On the seat itself, he found something that made him pause. A hospital bracelet, small enough for a child's wrist. The name read Ariana Torres, and the date was from 2 years ago, the same time frame as Marco's card. But it was the medical notes that caught his attention. Blood transfusion, type AB negative, donor anonymous.
AB negative. Rare.
Marco's blood type. Vincenzo photographed everything with his phone, then noticed something wedged under the seat, a prescription bottle. He pulled it out. Immunosuppressants. The child had received an organ transplant or had a serious autoimmune condition. Marco hadn't just visited this child. He'd saved her life. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the apartment building, Lena, without the child, moving with purpose toward her car. She stopped dead when she saw Vincenzo standing beside the Honda. "You're making this very difficult, Miss Torres," he said calmly, holding up the prescription bottle. Her face went white. "You can't. That's breaking and entering." The car was unlocked. Careless, for a woman with so much to protect, he pocketed the bottle. "We're going to have a conversation.
Right now.
You can invite me up to your apartment, or we can talk here in the rain where your neighbors can watch. Your choice." Lena glanced around desperately, as if help might materialize from the grimy buildings. It wouldn't. This neighborhood knew better than to interfere in matters that looked like Vincenzo's business. "Fine," she whispered. 5 minutes. That's all you get. I'll take what I need." He followed her into the building, noting the broken elevator and the stairwell that smelled of urine and cigarettes. Her apartment was on the 4th floor. She unlocked 3 separate deadbolts before pushing the door open. Inside, the contrast was stark. Where the building was neglected, Lena's apartment was immaculate. Cheap furniture, but clean. Children's drawings covered one wall. A small kitchen with a single plate drying by the sink. On the coffee table sat a photograph in a simple frame. Vincenzo picked it up before Lena could stop him. It showed Marco, alive, smiling, sitting in a hospital chair with little Ari on his lap. She was bald, clearly mid-treatment, but grinning widely. Marco was making a silly face for the camera. In the background, Vincenzo could see Lena, slightly out of focus, laughing. "When was this taken? Does it matter?" Lena's voice was hollow. She'd positioned herself between Vincenzo and the bedroom where her daughter slept. "Everything matters. The birthmark.
The eyes."
This, he held up the photo. "My son kept this part of his life completely hidden from me."
Why?
"Maybe because he knew you'd do exactly what you're doing right now." Lena's fear was giving way to anger. "Invading our privacy, threatening us." "I haven't threatened anyone. Your presence is a threat, Mr. Moretti. Do you think I don't know what you are? What you do?" "Marco told me stories. He was trying to get out, did you know that? He wanted to go legitimate, to be someone his." She stopped abruptly. "Someone is what?"
Vincenzo stepped closer.
"Finish that sentence." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "It doesn't matter."
He's gone.
"Is Ariana my granddaughter?" The question hung in the air like a knife. "No," Lena said firmly. "Marco was never Ari's father. He was her guardian angel, nothing more." "Then why does she call him Daddy?" "Because she was 4 and dying, and he was the only man who'd ever shown her kindness." Lena's voice broke. Her real father left before she was born.
Marco.
He just filled that empty space. He never claimed to be her father. We never. A phone buzzed. Vincenzo's. A text from Tony. Boss, we got a problem. Black SUV just pulled up outside the building. Not ours. Plates traced to Ruggieri's crew. Vincenzo's blood went cold. If the Ruggieris were here, this wasn't about Marco's secret anymore. This was about something far more dangerous. Vincenzo made a split-second decision. He grabbed Lena's arm and pulled her away from the window. Turn off the lights.
Now.
What? Why? Do it. His command voice left no room for argument. Lena stumbled to the switch, plunging the apartment into darkness. Outside, Vincenzo heard car doors slam. Heavy footsteps in the stairwell. Is there a back exit? He whispered. Fire escape. Through the bedroom. Wake your daughter. We're leaving. I'm not going anywhere with you. Vincenzo turned to face her in the darkness. The men coming up those stairs work for Don Ruggieri. If they're here looking for you, it's because they think you have something they want. And they won't ask nicely. So you have two choices. Come with me and live, or stay here and find out what they do to single mothers who get in their way. The footsteps were on the third floor now. Lena's resolve crumbled. She ran to the bedroom, emerging seconds later with a groggy Ari wrapped in a blanket. The child barely stirred. Vincenzo led them to the fire escape, his mind racing. Why would Ruggieri's men be after a nurse? Unless Marco had left something with her. Something dangerous. They descended the rusty metal ladder in silence. Vincenzo texted Marcus, "Meet us 2 blocks east."
Now.
Behind them, he heard the apartment door being kicked in. 3 hours later, they sat in a booth at Sal's Diner on the edge of Brooklyn, one of Vincenzo's clean properties, a place where his money kept mouth shut and cameras blind. Ari slept on the vinyl seat beside her mother, exhausted from the adrenaline. Lena clutched a cup of coffee like a lifeline, her hands still shaking. I need answers, Vincenzo said quietly. And this time you're going to give them to me. What did Marco give you? Nothing. I swear, he never gave me anything except, she paused, eyes widening. The card. The one you took from the cemetery. Is that what they want? A child's drawing? Vincenzo pulled out the laminated card, studying it under the diner's harsh lights. Just stick figures and Marco's handwriting. Nothing obviously valuable. Unless. He held it up to the light. There, barely visible through the lamination, were tiny numbers written in pencil along the edge. Coordinates? An account number. Marco visited you regularly, Vincenzo said. Where did you meet? At the hospital, mostly. Sometimes at a clinic. What clinic? Lena hesitated. An underground place. Off the books. Marco said he needed medical care that wouldn't leave records. He had me run blood tests, check for. I don't know what. Toxins, maybe? He never said explicitly. An underground clinic. Vincenzo knew the place she meant. A facility he'd used himself for years when family business required discretion. But why would Marco need secret medical care? Take me there, he said. Tonight. It's almost midnight. I don't care if it's 4 a.m. My son is dead, Miss Torres, and I'm starting to think his death wasn't the random ambush we were told about. If he was hiding something at that clinic, I need to know what it was. The clinic was in Red Hook, tucked behind a fish processing plant that masked the smell of antiseptic. Dr. Chun, a 70-year-old man who'd been patching up Moretti soldiers since Vincenzo's father ran the family, answered the door in his pajamas.
Vincenzo.
It's been some time. We need to talk about Marco. Dr. Chen's face fell. I'm sorry for your loss. He was a good man. Too good for her. He caught himself. For what? For this life. Vincenzo pushed past him into the clinic. Lena followed, carrying the sleeping Ari. What did my son come here for? You know I can't discuss patient confidentiality. Vincenzo grabbed a chair and sat down heavily. Chen, someone broke into Ms. Torres's apartment tonight looking for something Marco left behind. The Ruggieris are involved. If you want to honor Marco's memory, you'll tell me what he was doing here. Dr. Chen looked at Lena, who nodded slowly. The old doctor sighed and shuffled to a filing cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. Marco came here every week for the last 6 months of his life, Chen said. He was having blood work done. Testing for irregularities. What kind of irregularities?
Poison.
Specifically, slow-acting toxins that wouldn't show up in standard screenings. Chen opened the folder, revealing pages of test results. He was convinced someone in your organization was trying to kill him. Slowly, professionally. The words hit Vincenzo like a physical blow. That's impossible. Marco died in a drive-by. Wrong place, wrong time. Did he? Chen pulled out another document, an autopsy report that Vincenzo had never seen. This is the real autopsy, the one I performed here before the body went to the official medical examiner. Marco had toxic levels of arsenic in his system. Not enough to kill him outright, but enough to weaken him significantly over time. The drive-by might have finished the job, but someone had been poisoning your son for months. Lena gasped. Vincenzo felt his world tilting. Who? His voice was deadly quiet. Who had access to poison him? That's what Marco was trying to figure out. Chen handed over a notebook. Marco's handwriting filled the pages. Names.
Times.
Places. He suspected someone close. Someone at family dinners. Someone who knew his routines. Vincenzo flipped through the pages, his hands trembling. Near the end, one name appeared again and again, circled repeatedly.
Ferro.
His underboss. His most trusted advisor. Marco came to see Lena because she was outside the family, Chen continued. She was safe. He knew she'd help him without asking questions that might get back to whoever wanted him dead. Vincenzo looked at Lena with new understanding. He was protecting you. By keeping you secret. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. He said if anything happened to him, I should disappear. Take Ari and run. But I couldn't afford to run. And I hoped, that with him gone, whoever wanted him dead would forget about us. They haven't forgotten, Vincenzo said grimly. Which means Marco left something behind that they still want. And they think you have it. Morning light was breaking over Brooklyn when Vincenzo finally allowed Lena to return home. He'd insisted on having his men sweep the building first. All clear. The Ruggieri crew had vanished into the night. But something felt wrong. Predators didn't give up that easily. I need to get Ari's medication, Lena said as Marcus pulled up to her building. And clothes. We can't keep wearing the same. 5 minutes, Vincenzo interrupted. Marcus and Tony go in with you. You don't touch anything that looks disturbed. Lena nodded, too exhausted to argue. She'd been awake for 24 hours straight, running on fear and adrenaline. Ari stirred in her arms, finally waking up. Mama, ing hungry. I know, baby. We'll get breakfast soon. I promise. They climbed the stairs, the elevator still broken, probably would be forever. When they reached the 4th floor, Lena's apartment door stood ajar. Not kicked in like she'd expected from the earlier intrusion, but carefully opened. The locks had been picked clean. Wait here, Tony commanded, drawing his weapon. He and Marcus entered first, while Vincenzo kept Lena and Ari in the hallway. The silence stretched. Then Tony's voice. Boss, you need to see this. Vincenzo guided Lena inside, keeping Ari's face pressed against her mother's shoulder so the child wouldn't see. The apartment had been destroyed. Not ransacked, destroyed. Systematically, professionally, thoroughly. Every cushion had been sliced open, stuffing spilling out like guts. The drywall had been punctured in multiple places. Floorboards pried up. Even the children's drawings on the wall had been torn down and shredded. Someone had been looking for something specific, and they'd been willing to tear apart a child's home to find it. Lena made a sound like a wounded animal.
No, 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 no.
She ran to Ari's bedroom. Vincenzo followed and found her on her knees amid the wreckage of her daughter's sanctuary. The bed had been overturned, the mattress gutted. Every toy had been ripped open. The small bookshelf lay splintered on the floor. They destroyed Mr. Hoppy, Lena whispered, holding up the remains of the stuffed rabbit Vincenzo had seen in the car. Its head had been torn off, the seams ripped apart to check inside. Ari's had him since she was a baby. Since before Marco. Since. She broke down completely. Ari, still in the doorway, stared at the destruction with wide eyes.
Mama?
Why is my room broken? Don't look, sweetheart. Don't. But it was too late. The child had seen everything. Vincenzo felt something dangerous ignite in his chest. This wasn't just business anymore. This was personal. You didn't terrorize children. You didn't destroy a little girl's safe space. There were rules, even in his world, and someone had just broken the most fundamental one. Tony, get forensics here. I want prints, DNA, anything. And put a team on this building 24/7. Boss, with all respect, maybe we should just move them to a safe. I said guard this building. Vincenzo's voice could have cut steel. This is her home. No one gets to take that from her. But even as he said it, he knew they couldn't stay here. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Lena stood up slowly, still clutching the destroyed rabbit. There's nothing here. Whatever they were looking for, I don't have it. I never had it. Marco never gave me anything except kindness and she stopped, her face going pale. Oh God. What? The storage unit. Marco had a storage unit. He gave me a key 6 months ago, said it was just in case. I never used it. Never even thought about it after he died. Vincenzo grabbed her shoulders. Where's the key? I don't know. It was in my jewelry box, but... She ran to her bedroom, digging through the wreckage. The jewelry box had been smashed, its contents scattered. But there, under a broken mirror, was a small brass key with a number etched on it, 347. Do you know which facility? Queens. The big one off the highway. He said it was climate-controlled, that he had some of his mother's things stored there. Lena's hands were shaking as she held the key. Do you think that's what they were looking for? Do you think Marco hid something there? Only one way to find out. Vincenzo took the key. But we're not going unprepared. And you're not coming back here until this is over. I can't afford a hotel. You're not going to a hotel. He made a decision that would have been unthinkable 24 hours ago. You're coming to one of my properties. A safe house in Westchester. It's secure, isolated, and no one outside my inner circle knows about it. I can't accept. You don't have a choice, Miss Torres. Someone tore apart your home looking for Marco's secrets. They'll be back. Next time, they might not wait until you're gone. He glanced at Ari, who was now crying softly, overwhelmed by the destruction. Is that a risk you're willing to take with your daughter? Lena looked at her child, then at the ruins of their life, then back at Vincenzo. If I go with you, I need your word. Your word that you won't hurt us. That this isn't just you keeping us close until you get what you want. You have my word. On Marco's grave. It was the right thing to say. Lena's shoulders sagged in defeat, or maybe relief. Okay, but I need to call my supervisor at the hospital. I have a shift tonight. No more shifts. Not until this is resolved. I'll handle your employer. Vincenzo pulled out his phone. Pack whatever you can salvage. Clothes, medications, anything Ari needs. We leave in 10 minutes. As Lena gathered their belongings, Tony pulled Vincenzo aside. Boss, I found something in the kitchen, hidden behind the refrigerator. He held up a small electronic device, a bug. Professional grade, still active. Someone had been listening to everything. The bug changed everything. Vincenzo held the tiny device between his fingers, turning it over in the light. Military grade. Expensive. The kind of equipment that required connections and serious money. Whoever planted it hadn't just been searching Lena's apartment. They'd been monitoring her for days, maybe weeks. How long has this been active? He asked Tony. Can't tell without taking it to our tech guy. But based on the model, it's got a range of about half a mile. Someone's been parked nearby listening. Which meant they'd heard everything. Lena mentioning the storage unit. The key. The location in Queens. We need to move. Now Vincenzo crushed the bug under his heel. Change of plans. We're not going to the safe house yet. Boss. If they've been listening, they know where we're headed. They'll hit the storage unit before we get there. Or worse, They'll wait and ambush us. He turned to Lena, who was stuffing clothes into a garbage bag since her suitcase had been slashed to ribbons. Ms. Torres, we need to talk. Somewhere public. Somewhere they can't touch us. I don't understand. The diner. The one I took you to last night. It's neutral ground, and it's got enough of my people around to keep us safe. He checked his watch. We meet there in 2 hours. That gives me time to check something first. Lena's eyes narrowed. Check what? Whether my organization has a leak. Because someone knew exactly where to find you, and the list of people with that information is very, very short. 2 hours later, Vincenzo sat across from Lena in the same vinyl booth at Sal's diner. This time, Ari was awake, working her way through a stack of chocolate chip pancakes that was bigger than her head. The normalcy of it, a child eating breakfast, felt surreal against the backdrop of bugs and break-ins. Lena looked worse in the daylight. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. But there was something different in her expression now. The fear was still there, but it had been joined by anger. I want the truth, she said quietly, watching Ari color on the paper placemat. All of it. Who was Marco really? What was he involved in? And why is everyone so desperate to find whatever he left behind? Vincenzo had spent the last 2 hours soul-searching. Marco's notebook, the one Dr. Chin had given him, contained more than just suspicions about Pharaoh. It contained evidence, detailed logs of meetings, money transfers, shipments that didn't match official records. Marco had been building a case against someone in the organization. Maybe multiple someones. My son was trying to go legitimate, Vincenzo began. He wanted to clean up the family business, transition us away from the darker elements. But when you try to shine light into dark corners, you find things people want to keep hidden. Like what? Like a trafficking operation I knew nothing about. Human trafficking, the words tasted like poison. Marco discovered that Pharaoh, my underboss, had been running it for years using our infrastructure. Pharaoh was in business with the Ruggieri's, using our ships, our warehouses, our protection, all without my knowledge. Lena's face went white. Human trafficking? Like. Yes, Vincenzo's jaw clenched. The worst kind. Marco was gathering evidence to expose it. Not just to me, but to the feds. He was going to burn down that entire operation, even if it meant bringing federal attention to the family. So Pharaoh killed him. Pharaoh poisoned him, weakened him, then probably leaked his location to the Ruggieri's, who finished the job and made it look random. Vincenzo pulled out Marco's notebook, sliding it across the table. It's all in here. Names, dates, locations. This is what they're looking for. This is what they think you have. Lena stared at the notebook like it was a live grenade. But I don't have it. You do. They don't know that. And even if they did, they can't be sure Marco didn't make copies. Didn't hide additional evidence somewhere else. He paused. Like in a storage unit in Queens. We have to go there. We have to get whatever Marco left. We will. But first, I need you to understand something. Vincenzo leaned forward. Marco kept you secret to protect you. But he also kept you close because he trusted you. That card he gave you with the numbers on it, I had my tech guy analyze it. Those aren't coordinates. They're a password. Lena blinked. A password to what? We don't know yet. But my guess? Whatever's in that storage unit needs that password to access it. Marco left you the key because he knew if anything happened to him, you'd be smart enough to stay away, unless someone came looking. Someone like me, he smiled grimly. My son knew I'd find you eventually. He was counting on it. That's insane. Why not just tell you himself? Because he didn't know who to trust. He suspected Pharaoh, but Pharaoh isn't acting alone. There are others. People close to me. The admission hurt. Marco was protecting his evidence the only way he knew how, by hiding it with someone completely outside the family structure. Ari suddenly spoke up, syrup on her chin. Mama, can we go see Daddy's treasure? Both adults froze. What did you say, baby? Lena asked carefully. Daddy's treasure. The place with all the boxes. He took me there once when you were at work. Mrs. Chin watched me while he did important stuff. She went back to coloring, oblivious to the bombshell she'd just dropped. Vincenzo and Lena exchanged looks. Ari, Vincenzo said gently, do you remember what Daddy's treasure looked like? The little girl nodded enthusiastically. Big silver boxes. With lights. He said they had really important stories inside. Stories that would help people. Digital storage. Marco had kept backups. Did Daddy give you anything to remember the treasure by?
Vincenzo pressed. A toy?
A picture? Ari reached into her pocket and pulled out something that made Lena gasp, a small USB drive on a keychain, shaped like a heart. He said to keep it safe. That it was our secret. Lena's hands shook as she took it. Ari, honey, you've had this the whole time? Since before Daddy went to heaven?
Uh-huh.
I keep it in my special pocket. The one you sewed inside Mr. Hoppy, her face fell. But the bad people broke Mr. Hoppy. They'd been one seam away from finding it. One more minute of searching through that destroyed rabbit, and the Ruggieri's would have had everything. Vincenzo looked at the USB drive, then at the 4-year-old girl who'd been carrying Marco's insurance policy for 3 months, without knowing it. Miss Torres, he said quietly, I think it's time we visit that storage unit. Because whatever's on this drive, Marco made damn sure the full story survived him. They never made it to the storage unit. Halfway to Queens, Ari started coughing. At first, Lena dismissed it, just excitement, too much sugar from breakfast. But then the child's breathing became labored, wheezing with each inhale. Her lips started turning blue. Pull over. Lena screamed. Pull over now. Marcus swerved to the shoulder of the expressway. Lena was already in the back seat, digging through her purse for Ari's emergency inhaler. But when she pressed it to her daughter's lips, nothing happened. Empty. She'd forgotten to refill it in all the chaos. Hospital, Lena gasped. We need a hospital. No hospitals, Vincenzo said sharply. If Ruggieri's people are watching for you, that's the first place they'll look. Every ER in the city will have your photo by now. My daughter can't breathe. Lena's voice cracked with panic. Ari's eyes were rolling back, her small body convulsing. Vincenzo made a split-second decision. Marcus, take us to Dr. Castellano's place. Morningside Heights. Move. The car lurched back into traffic, sirens blaring from the police scanner. Marcus kept running. Lena held Ari against her chest, trying to keep her airway open, whispering prayers in Spanish. Who's Dr. Castellano? She managed. Best private physician in New York. Handles our family's medical needs. He's got a full clinic in his brownstone. Everything a hospital has. Without the questions, Vincenzo was already on the phone. Castellano, I'm bringing you a child in respiratory distress. 4 years old, history of, he looked at Lena. Immunodeficiency. Lena choked out. She had a bone marrow transplant 18 months ago. She's on suppressants. This could be rejection, or infection, or... You hear that? Vincenzo said into the phone. Have everything ready. 5 minutes. They made it in 4. Dr. Castellano's clinic was hidden behind the elegant facade of a Harlem brownstone that had belonged to his family for 3 generations. Inside, it was pure medical efficiency, examination rooms, monitoring equipment, even a small surgical suite. Castellano was 60, silver-haired, with steady hands that had saved more Moretti lives than Vincenzo could count. He had Ari on oxygen within 30 seconds, starting in 4 within a minute. Talk to me, he said to Lena as he worked. What's her baseline? What medications is she on? Lena rattled off the list: immunosuppressants, antivirals, prophylactic antibiotics. Castellano's eyes widened. This child had a transplant? When? Where? St. Catherine's. 18 months ago. She had aplastic anemia. Her bone marrow was failing. We were running out of options when... Lena's voice broke. When we found a donor match.
Vincenzo stepped closer.
What kind of match? Bone marrow. The donor was anonymous, but the match was perfect. 10 out of 10 markers. The odds of finding that outside a family member are astronomical, but somehow, she looked at Ari, whose color was slowly returning as the oxygen did its work. Somehow we got lucky. Vincenzo's mind was racing. Marco's blood type. The hospital visits. The secret medical consultations with Dr. Chen. Miss Torres, when was the transplant? March 15th. 2 years ago.
Why?
Vincenzo pulled out his phone, scrolling through Marco's calendar, the one recovered from his personal effects. March 15th, 2 years ago, Marco had blocked out an entire week marked hospital, private. Castellano, Vincenzo said quietly, I need you to run a DNA test. This child and me. Full genetic panel. Lena's head snapped up.
What? No.
Absolutely not. You said the donor was a perfect match. You said the odds outside a family member were astronomical. Vincenzo moved to the bedside, looking down at Ari's small face. Marco's eyes stared back at him. Marco's birthmark on her neck. What if it wasn't luck? What if Marco was the donor? That's impossible. The donor was anonymous, and Marco, he wasn't, but Lena's conviction was faltering. We were never together.
Not like that.
Ari's father was someone else. Someone who left before she was born. I'm not suggesting Marco was her biological father, Vincenzo said carefully. I'm suggesting he was her biological uncle. The room went silent except for the beeping of monitors. My wife died when Marco was 10, Vincenzo continued. Before she passed, she told me something I never shared with anyone. She'd had a daughter before we met. A teenage pregnancy, a child given up for adoption. A little girl she never stopped thinking about. He looked at Lena. How old is your mother, Miss Torres? 32. She had me young, 15.
It was
complicated. She died when Ari was born. Complications from diabetes she'd hidden from me. What was your mother's birth name? Before she married? She never married. Her name was Rosa Elena Santiago. Lena's face was pale. Why does this? My wife's name was Elena Santiago, Vincenzo said softly. Before she became Elena Moretti. The machine seemed to beep louder in the sudden silence. That's insane, Lena whispered. That would make me and Ari my granddaughter and great-granddaughter, Vincenzo finished. It would explain why Marco took such an interest in you. Why he donated marrow, without hesitation. Why he kept you secret. He was protecting family. The family I never knew I had. Dr. Castellano cleared his throat. I can have DNA results in 6 hours if we rush it. But Mr. Moretti, even if you're right, this child needs immediate care. Her immune system is compromised. This attack could be the start of rejection, which means she might need another transplant. Lena finished hollowly. And the only person who is a perfect match is dead. Ari stirred, her eyes fluttering open.
Mama?
Why does everything hurt? Lena grabbed her daughter's hand, tears streaming down her face. It's okay, baby. Mama's here. Everything's going to be okay. But Vincenzo saw the lie in her eyes. Nothing was okay. His son was dead, possibly murdered by people he'd trusted. This woman and child might be his family, the only family he had left. And someone out there wanted them all dead. Run the tests, he told Castellano. All of them. And doctor? No one knows they're here. Not even my own people. Understood? Understood. Vincenzo stepped into the hallway, pulling out his phone. He had 6 hours before the DNA results came back. 6 hours to figure out who he could trust. And 6 hours to decide what he'd do if Lena and Ari really were his blood. In his world, family was everything. But family also made you vulnerable in ways that could get everyone killed. The DNA results came back in 5 hours, not 6. Vincenzo was in Castellano's office when the doctor walked in with a printed report, his expression unreadable. Well, Vincenzo asked, though part of him already knew. Ari is your great-granddaughter. 99.9% certainty. Castellano set the papers on the desk. Lena is your granddaughter. Elena's child from before you met. The genetic markers don't lie. Vincenzo stared at the scientific proof of what his gut had been telling him. Family. Real family. Not the kind built on loyalty and fear, but the kind written in blood and bone. And her condition? Stable for now. But the episode was a warning sign. Her body is starting to reject the transplant. Without intervention, She has maybe 6 months. With a new donor, maybe years. Maybe a lifetime.
Find a donor then.
Money is no object. It's not about money, Vincenzo. It's about compatibility. The registry shows no matches. Her best chance would be a family member, a sibling, a parent. He paused meaningfully. An uncle, Vincenzo finished bitterly. Like Marco. Like Marco. Castellano confirmed.
I'm sorry.
Vincenzo's phone buzzed. A message from Tony. Boss, you need to see this.
Now.
He found Tony in the brownstone's secure communications room, a laptop open in front of him. On the screen was surveillance footage from Lena's apartment building, time-stamped from the previous night. This is from the building across the street, Tony explained. I pulled favors to get it. Watch. The grainy footage showed 3 men entering Lena's building at 11:47 p.m., while Vincenzo had been at Dr. Chen's clinic learning about Marco's poisoning. The men wore dark clothes, moved with military precision. 20 minutes later, they emerged carrying nothing. Professional job, Tony said. They knew exactly what they were doing. But that's not the interesting part. Look at this. He fast-forwarded to footage from an hour later. A different vehicle arrived, a black SUV with tinted windows. 4 men got out. These moved differently, sloppier, angrier. They kicked in doors, made noise. The Ruggieri crew that had spooked them away. 2 separate teams, Vincenzo said slowly. 2 separate searches.
Exactly.
The first team was ours. The words hit like a physical blow. What? I ran the plates. The car belongs to one of our shell companies. And boss, Tony pulled up another window, showing clear footage of one man's face as he looked up at a security camera. That's Matteo, Ferro's nephew, part of his personal crew. Vincenzo's blood ran cold. Ferro sent his own men to search Lena's apartment. Before the Ruggieris. Like he knew they were coming and wanted to get there first, Tony pulled up more files. It gets worse. I've been digging into Ferro's communications like you asked. He's been in contact with Don Ruggieri for months. And boss, there's video. The next footage showed a parking garage. 2 men meeting in shadow. One was unmistakably Ferro, thick build, distinctive scar on his left hand. The other was younger, sleeker.
Ruggieri sont Carlo.
The audio was muffled, but Tony had cleaned it up. Ferro's voice came through. The kid has it. The nurse's daughter. Marco gave it to her before he died. Some kind of USB drive. Then get it. Carlo's voice responded. My father's patience is running out. If that evidence surfaces. I know what happens if it surfaces. I'm the one who helped cover up the shipments, Ferro's voice turned harsh. But the old man is protecting them now. Vincenzo's gone soft over this nurse. Then maybe it's time for a new old man. Silence. Then Ferro. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that if Vincenzo Moretti were to have an accident while protecting some nobody nurse and her kid, the family might need new leadership. Leadership that understands the value of our partnership. You want me to kill Vincenzo. I want you to think about your future. About what side of this you want to be on when the dust settles. The video ended. Tony looked at Vincenzo with grim certainty. He's planning a move, boss. And soon. He knows we're getting close to the truth. Vincenzo's mind was racing. Ferro had helped poison Marco. Had worked with the Ruggieris to eliminate his son. And now he was planning to kill Vincenzo himself and take over the family. Where is Ferro now? His usual spot. The social club in Staten Island. He's got 6 guys with him, his personal crew. And our people? Who can I trust? Tony didn't hesitate.
Me.
Marcus. Sal from the diner. Maybe a dozen others who were loyal to Marco. But boss, the family split. Ferro's been building his own power base for years. If this goes public, if there's a war. There won't be a war, Vincenzo's voice was ice. Because Ferro's already made his choice. He chose money and power over family. Over my son, he stood. Contact everyone we trust. Tell them to be ready. But don't make a move yet. What are you going to do? I'm going to give Ferro exactly what he wants, an opportunity to make his move. But first, I need to make sure Lena and Ari are somewhere he can never find them. Back in Ari's recovery room, Vincenzo found Lena asleep in a chair beside her daughter's bed, her hand clutching the child's. They looked peaceful, despite everything. Family. His family. The only blood relatives he had left in this world. The USB drive sat on the side table, Marco's insurance policy, his final gift. Evidence that could bring down Pharaoh, the Ruggieris, and half a dozen other corrupt operations. But using it meant war. Meant putting Lena and Ari directly in the crossfire. Vincenzo's phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown number. A text message with an attached image. The photo showed Lena's apartment building from outside. In the foreground, a rifle scope was visible, crosshairs centered on a window. The message read, "You can't protect them forever. Give us the drive or the next bullet finds the child." They'd found them. Somehow, despite all his precautions, Pharaoh and the Ruggieris had found them. Vincenzo looked at his sleeping great-granddaughter, hooked up to machines that were keeping her alive, and made a decision. If they wanted war, he'd give them war. But first, he'd make sure the only family he had left survived it. The transfer happened in darkness. Vincenzo had Castellano sedate Ari lightly for the journey, easier on the child, and safer if things went wrong. Lena sat beside her daughter in the back of an unmarked ambulance, one of 3 identical vehicles that left Castellano's brownstones simultaneously, each heading in different directions. "Where are we going?" Lena asked as the city lights faded behind them. "Somewhere that doesn't exist on any map," Vincenzo replied from the front passenger seat. "Somewhere only 5 people in the world know about." The safe house was 90 minutes north, hidden in the Catskills among rolling hills and dense forest. The property had belonged to Vincenzo's father, bought under layers of shell companies so deep that even law enforcement had never found it. A 2-story stone house that looked modest from the outside but had been fortified like a bunker, bulletproof windows, reinforced doors, a security system that would make the Pentagon jealous. They arrived just before midnight. Marcus and Tony had gone ahead to sweep the property and stock supplies. Inside, the house was surprisingly warm. Wood floors, comfortable furniture, nothing like the cold, safe house Lena had imagined. "The master bedroom is upstairs," Vincenzo said as Tony carried the sleeping Ari inside. "Medical equipment is already set up. Castellano will check in twice daily via secure video." Lena followed Tony upstairs, getting Ari settled. The room had been transformed into a mini hospital suite, monitors for stands, medications lined up on a dresser. But someone had also added touches for a child, stuffed animals on a chair, coloring books on the nightstand, a nightlight shaped like a butterfly.
Who did this?
Lena whispered. "Boss's orders," Tony said simply. He wanted her to feel safe. After Tony left, Lena explored the room more carefully. That's when she saw them, framed photographs on the far wall. A young boy, maybe 8 or 9, grinning at the camera with a baseball glove. The same boy, older now, in a graduation gown. A teenager standing beside a beautiful dark-haired woman.
Marco.
These were Marco's childhood photos. She moved closer, studying each image. The resemblance between Marco and Ari was undeniable. The same golden brown eyes, the same slight dimple in the left cheek, even the way they both smiled with their whole face. "He grew up here," Vincenzo's voice came from the doorway. This was his room. Before the city, before the business. When he was just a kid who loved baseball and wanted to be an astronaut. Lena turned. Vincenzo looked older somehow, diminished by the weight of everything that had happened. "Why didn't you tell me this was his room?" "Because I thought you should see it yourself. See who he was before," he trailed off, moving to sit in the chair beside Ari's bed. "Before he became what I made him. You didn't make him do anything."
Marco chose.
Marco never had a choice. Vincenzo's voice was bitter. From the day he was born, his path was set. Moretti men don't get to choose their destiny. We inherit it. He looked at the sleeping child. But she will. Ari will never have to carry this weight. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted beyond measure. "The DNA tests.
Castellano told me.
We're really family." Yes, Vincenzo pulled something from his pocket, an old photograph, creased and faded. It showed a young woman, maybe 16, holding a newborn baby. This is Elena, my wife. She kept this hidden for 25 years. The only photo she had of the daughter she gave up. Lena took the photo, with trembling hands. The young woman's face was unmistakable, her mother's face. Rosa's face. She looks just like my mom, Lena whispered. I always wondered why Mom never talked about her childhood. Why she had no family photos, no history before she turned 18. She said she'd been in foster care, that her records were sealed. She was protecting you. Just like Elena was protecting her by staying away, Vincenzo's voice cracked. Elena searched for her for years, hired investigators, but the adoption was closed. By the time she found out where Rosa was, your mother had already moved across the country, changed her name. Elena died, never knowing she had a granddaughter. And Marco? Did he know? I told him about his sister after Elena passed. He spent years trying to find her. When he finally tracked Rosa to New York, she just died giving birth to Ari. Vincenzo smiled sadly. Marco said he walked into that hospital intending to introduce himself as your uncle. Instead, he found you crying in the ICU, holding a dying baby. The doctor said Ari needed a bone marrow transplant, but there were no matches. And Marco tested himself immediately. Lena finished, tears streaming down her face. He never told me why.
Just said he wanted to help.
I thought he was just an incredibly kind stranger. He was protecting you. From me. From this life. Vincenzo gestured vaguely at the fortress around them. He knew that if I found out about you and Ari, I'd pull you into the family. Into the danger. He wanted you to have a normal life, free from all this blood and violence. They sat in silence, watching Ari sleep. Outside, night birds called to each other through the forest. Mr. Moretti.
Vincenzo.
We're family now. Use my name. Vincenzo. Lena tried the name, foreign on her tongue. That threat. The photo they sent. How did they find us at Castellanos? I don't know. But I will. His jaw clenched. Someone in my inner circle is feeding information to Pharaoh. Someone close enough to know our movements. A sound from downstairs. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Vincenzo was on his feet instantly, hand moving to his weapon. But then Tony's voice called up. Boss, we've got a problem. They found Tony in the living room, his laptop open, face grim. Marcus stood by the window with a rifle. What is it?
Vincenzo demanded. Surveillance footage.
From the building across from Castellanos, Tony turned the screen around. This was taken an hour after we left. The video showed a figure on a rooftop, setting up photographic equipment with a long-range lens. The figure turned toward the camera for just a moment, long enough for facial recognition software to ID him. That's Polly, Vincenzo said slowly. He's been with us for 15 years.
Drives for the family.
I trusted him. There's more. Tony pulled up financial records. He's been making deposits. 10,000 every 2 weeks for the last 3 months. Always cash. Always from a different branch. Pharaoh's been paying him. Vincenzo's voice went deadly quiet. How many others? How many people on my payroll are working for that bastard? Before Tony could answer, every light in the house went out. Emergency generators kicked in after 3 seconds, enough time for someone with night vision to get into position. Marcus shouted a warning, but it came too late. The first window exploded inward in a shower of bulletproof glass and smoke grenade. Then the second. The third. Get upstairs. Vincenzo roared at Lena. Lock the door, and don't come out. But Lena was already running, taking the stairs 3 at a time, driven by the only instinct that mattered, protect her child. Behind her, she heard gunfire.
Shouting.
The sounds of men fighting and dying. Pharaoh had found them. And this time, there was nowhere left to run. Lena slammed the bedroom door and threw the deadbolt. Ari was awake now, eyes wide with terror as smoke began seeping under the door. Mama, what's happening? Shh, baby. It's okay, Lena's hands shook as she disconnected Ari from the monitors. They didn't have time for careful procedures. She scooped her daughter up, looking desperately around the room for another exit. The window. But they were on the second floor, and Ari was too weak to. Gunfire erupted directly below them. Someone screamed. Then silence, horrible and complete. Lena's nursing instincts took over. The closet. She carried Ari into Marco's old closet, burrowing behind winter coats that still smelled faintly of his cologne. She pressed her hand over her daughter's mouth, her own heart hammering so loud she was sure someone would hear it. Footsteps on the stairs. Multiple sets. Then Vincenzo's voice, cold as death. "You're making a mistake, Pharaoh." "The only mistake I made was waiting this long," Pharaoh's voice, right outside the bedroom door. "Open up, Vincenzo. Or I start putting bullets through the wood, and we see what hits." "You won't kill the child. You need her alive to get the USB drive."
Doi.
"The nurse will give me anything I want once I've got her daughter bleeding in front of her." A pause. Last chance. The door or the girl's life. Lena felt Ari trembling against her. She closed her eyes, preparing to give herself up. The sound of splintering wood. But not from the bedroom door, from downstairs. New voices shouting orders. Federal agents? Police. "It's a raid," someone yelled. FBI. Chaos erupted. More gunfire, this time accompanied by flashbangs and the distinctive crack of tactical weapons.
Ferro swore viciously.
Fall back. Everyone out now. The footsteps retreated, rushed and panicked. Lena waited, counting her heartbeats. 100. 200. Then the bedroom door burst open. She almost screamed, but it was Tony, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. "They're gone.
For now.
We need to move." Downstairs was a war zone. Marcus lay on the floor, conscious but injured, pressure bandage already applied to his shoulder. Vincenzo stood by the shattered window, phone pressed to his ear, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. "What happened?" Lena asked, settling Ari on the couch away from the blood. "The cavalry arrived," Tony said grimly. "Someone called in a tip about gunfire. Real FBI showed up, not the ones on Pharaoh's payroll. Pharaoh had to run or risk federal charges. But how did he find us? This place was supposed to be secret." Vincenzo hung up his phone. "Because someone I trusted told him exactly where we'd be." He looked at Tony. "Show her." Tony pulled up his laptop again, this time showing a chain of text messages recovered from Polly's phone. The messages went back months, Pharaoh asking questions, Polly providing answers. Where Vincenzo would be, what routes he'd take, who he was meeting with. But the most recent message, sent just 2 hours ago, included GPS coordinates for the safe house. Polly's been Pharaoh's inside man since before Marco died, Vincenzo said, his voice hollow. He's the one who told Pharaoh about Marco's meetings with Lena. He's probably the one who leaked Marco's location the night he was killed. Lena felt sick. Where is he now? Running. But he won't get far. Vincenzo's expression promised violence. No one betrays this family and lives to. Stop, the word came from Ari, tiny but clear. Everyone turned to look at the 4-year-old sitting on the couch. Daddy wouldn't want more people to die. The room fell silent. "Ari, sweetheart," Lena began. "Daddy told me about bad men. He said sometimes good people do bad things because they're scared. He said the best thing is to stop the bad things, not just punish the bad people." Ari looked at Vincenzo with Marco's eyes. "Are you going to be like the bad men, or like my daddy?" Vincenzo stared at the child, his great-granddaughter, who had just delivered a moral lesson with the simple clarity only children possess. Marco's wisdom, echoing through his daughter's innocent voice. "Your daddy," Vincenzo said quietly, "was a better man than I ever was." He walked to the wall safe hidden behind a family portrait and spun the combination. Inside were stacks of cash, several passports, and a leather-bound notebook. He pulled out the notebook and handed it to Lena. "This is Marco's personal journal, from the last year of his life. I found it in his apartment after he died, but I couldn't bring myself to read it until yesterday." He opened to a specific page, marked with a ribbon. Read this entry. Dated 3 weeks before he was killed. Lena read aloud, her voice shaking. I met with Special Agent Rebecca Sutton today. She's with the FBI's Organized Crime Division. I gave her copies of everything I've collected on Pharaoh's trafficking ring. She says they're building a case, but they need more time. I'm running out of time. Pharaoh suspects something. He's been asking questions, putting pressure on people close to me. She looked up. Marco is working with the FBI. Keep reading, Vincenzo said. I've decided to create a failsafe, Lena continued. If something happens to me, I need to make sure Pharaoh goes down. I'm storing everything, documents, recordings, financial records, in a secure location. The key is with Lena. She doesn't know what it opens, and she won't unless something happens to me. She's the only person in my life that Pharaoh doesn't know about. The only one who's truly safe. The next entry was dated 2 days before Marco's death. I suspect someone in our inner circle is feeding information to Pharaoh. I've narrowed it down to 3 people, Polly, Matteo, or worse, Uncle Vincent's driver, someone so close that Dad would never suspect. I can't tell Dad yet. Not until I have proof. But if you're reading this, Dad, and I'm gone, trust no one. Not even the people you've known for years. Pharaoh's corruption runs deeper than either of us realized. The final entry, written the day before Marco died, consisted of just one line. Tonight I'm meeting with the FBI again. They have a witness willing to testify. This could be over soon. Finally, Ari and Lena can be safe. Finally, I can tell Dad about his granddaughter without fear. Lena's tears fell on the page, smudging the ink. Marco had died protecting them. Had died before he could finish bringing down the people who'd poisoned him.
There's a witness, she said.
Someone who knows everything. Marco was meeting them the night he died. The witness died 3 days after Marco, Vincenzo said flatly.
Car accident.
Very convenient timing. Then we use what we have. The USB drive, Marco's evidence. Won't be enough, Tony interrupted, pulling up another file. I've analyzed the USB. It's heavily encrypted. Without the password, it's useless. We have the password, Lena said. The numbers on the card Marco gave Ari. Tony shook his head. I tried those. They're part of it, but there's more. The encryption requires a 16-character code. The numbers only give us 8-inch. Vincenzo moved to the window, staring out at the dark forest. Marco was thorough. He wouldn't create a system he couldn't access himself. The rest of the code has to be something he could remember. Something significant. His birthday? Lena suggested. Tried it, Tony said. His mother's name? The address here? Tried everything obvious. Ari spoke up again, her voice small. Daddy's treasure. Everyone turned to her. What about Daddy's treasure, baby?
Lena asked.
At the place with the boxes. He had a special puzzle. He made me promise to remember it. She scrunched up her face, trying to recall. Red, blue, yellow, green. Then numbers. 1, 9, 8, 7-inch.
1987. Vincenzo Bride.
The year Marco was born. But red, blue, yellow, green. Colors of the puzzle pieces, Ari said proudly. In Daddy's special box. The one that needs 2 keys. The storage unit. Marco had left a puzzle, literal and figurative, for them to solve. We need to get to Queens, Lena said. Agreed. But Vincenzo's phone rang, interrupting him. He looked at the screen, and his face went pale. It's Pharaoh. He answered on speaker. Vincenzo, old friend. Pharaoh's voice oozed false warmth. Quite the exciting evening. I assume everyone survived. What do you want? Simple trade. The USB drive and whatever else Marco left behind. In exchange, I'll call off the contract on your little family. The Ruggieris will forget they ever existed. I don't negotiate with traitors. Don't you?
Ferro laughed.
Because I have something you might want back. Or rather, someone. The sound of muffled crying came through the phone. Then a woman's voice, terrified. Boss? Boss, I'm sorry. They grabbed me outside Castellano's. Dr. Castellano's nurse. the woman who'd helped treat Ari. You have 12 hours, Pharaoh said. Bring everything to the old pier on Staten Island. Come alone, or she dies. And Vincenzo? If I even suspect the FBI is involved, I'll make sure your great-granddaughter needs another transplant by removing her current one personally. The line went dead. Vincenzo had no intention of meeting Pharaoh's demands. But he also couldn't let an innocent woman die because she'd helped his family. So he did what Marco would have done. He made a plan that served multiple purposes at once. We go to the storage unit first, he announced. Get whatever Marco left there. Then we use it as bait. That's exactly what Pharaoh expects, Tony argued.
Good.
Let him expect it. Vincenzo's eyes were cold calculation now. We make him think we're panicking, making mistakes. Meanwhile, we get that evidence to the FBI, the real FBI, not the agents on his payroll. And the nurse. We get her back. But not the way Pharaoh thinks. 4 hours later, they were in Queens. The storage facility was a massive complex near the airport, rows upon rows of identical units protected by security gates and cameras. Marco's unit, number 347, was on the 3rd floor of the climate-controlled building. Lena used the key, while Vincenzo and Tony kept watch. Ari sat in the car with Marcus, who despite his injured shoulder had insisted on coming. The unit door rolled up to reveal a space bigger than Lena's entire apartment. Boxes lined the walls, meticulously labeled in Marco's handwriting. But in the center sat something that made Vincenzo's breath catch, an antique desk that had belonged to his wife, Elena. The desk she'd kept in her private study, where she'd written letters to the daughter she'd given up. He kept her desk, Vincenzo whispered. Lena approached it carefully. On the surface sat a puzzle box, elegant wood inlay in red, blue, yellow, and green. Exactly as Ari had described. And on the box, a dual-lock mechanism requiring 2 keys. I have 1 key, Lena said, pulling out the brass key from the cemetery. Where's the other? Vincenzo reached under his shirt, pulling out a chain he'd worn for 30 years. On it hung his wedding ring and a small silver key, Elena's key, to her most private possessions. Marco must have made a copy, he said softly, inserting it into the second lock. Both keys turned simultaneously. The puzzle box opened with a soft click. Inside lay a tablet computer, fully charged and waiting. The screen showed a password prompt, 16 characters. Tony immediately entered the 8 numbers from Ari's card, then looked at the color sequence. Red, blue, yellow, green. How does that translate to letters? It doesn't, Lena said suddenly. She was looking at the desk drawers, which were painted in the same 4 colors. She opened the red drawer first. Inside was a piece of paper with the letters RM, blue drawer, ET yellow, LV green, IA. Remetelvia, Tony typed, combining them with the numbers. The tablet unlocked. The screen filled with files. Hundreds of documents, photos, audio recordings. Years of evidence against Pharaoh and the Ruggieri family. Shipping manifests for human trafficking routes. Financial records showing money laundering. Photos of politicians and police officers accepting bribes. And most damning, a video of Pharaoh personally meeting with trafficking victims, selecting which ones to process. This is enough to put him away for life, Tony breathed. Multiple life sentences. Then we need to get it to the FBI, Lena said. Agent Sutton, the one Marco was working with, is dead, Vincenzo interrupted. Died in a mugging 2 months ago. He pulled out his phone. But I know someone else. Someone who owes Marco a favor. He dialed a number. Assistant Director Chin? This is Vincenzo Moretti. Yes, that Vincenzo Moretti. I need to speak with you about my son. No, this isn't a trap. Marco was working with one of your agents before he died. Agent Sutton. He left behind evidence that, he paused, listening. You already knew? Then why haven't you? I see. You needed corroboration. Well, I'm offering it now. Full cooperation. Everything Marco collected, plus my testimony about Pharaoh's operations. Yes, I understand what that means for me. I don't care. Some things are more important than. The window exploded. Not from a bullet, from a concussion grenade. Tony tackled Vincenzo to the ground as smoke filled the storage unit. Lena grabbed the tablet and dove behind a stack of boxes. "It's a hit," Tony shouted, pulling his weapon. "They tracked us." But that was impossible. No one knew about this location except Marcus. The realization hit Vincenzo like ice water. Marcus had been with them the whole time. Marcus had driven them here. Marcus, who'd been Vincenzo's driver for 15 years. Through the smoke, figures in tactical gear rappelled through the shattered window. Not Pharaoh's men. These moved with military precision. Private contractors. Lena scrambled toward the door, clutching the tablet. One of the contractors cut her off. She did the only thing she could, threw the tablet back toward Tony and ran in the opposite direction, drawing the attacker away.
No.
Vincenzo roared, but 2 contractors were already on him. Tony caught the tablet, secured it in his jacket, and made for the emergency exit. But more contractors poured in from the stairwell. They were surrounded. A voice crackled over a loudspeaker. "Vincenzo Moretti, you're under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. This is the FBI. Stand down." But something was wrong. Real FBI would have used the front entrance, would have evacuated civilians first. These men were executing a tactical assault on a storage facility, with a child nearby in the car. "These aren't feds," Tony said, reaching the same conclusion. "They're dressed like them, but..." One of the contractors pulled off his helmet. It was Pharaoh's nephew, Matteo.
Surprise, Matteo grinned.
"Uncle Pharaoh sends his regards." See, the thing about fake FBI raids, nobody questions them until it's too late. Outside, Vincenzo heard tires squealing. His phone buzzed, a message from a number he didn't recognize. "We have the child. Storage facility roof. 10 minutes. Come alone or she goes over the edge." They'd taken Ari. Lena's scream echoed through the storage unit as she realized the same thing. The contractors had used the smoke as cover to extract Marcus, who'd carried Ari out a side exit. Marcus hadn't been wounded in the safe house attack. That blood had been fake, a performance to maintain his cover. He'd been Pharaoh's man all along. "The roof," Vincenzo said, his voice deadly calm. "Take me to the roof." "Boss, it's a trap." "I know it's a trap," he looked at Tony. "Get that tablet to Chin. No matter what happens to me, you make sure Marco's evidence reaches the FBI."
"Vincenzo."
"That's an order." He turned to Matteo. "You want me?
"You've got me."
But the child goes free. That's non-negotiable." Matteo's grin widened. "You're in no position to negotiate, old man. But sure, let's go to the roof. Uncle Pharaoh is waiting to have a conversation. A final conversation." They zip-tied Vincenzo's hands and dragged him toward the stairs. Behind them, Tony fought off 2 contractors, creating enough chaos to slip away with the tablet. Lena tried to follow Vincenzo, but they held her back.
"Nah."
Ari's voice came from the rooftop, terrified and small. "I'm coming, baby," Lena screamed, fighting against her captors. "I'm coming." But they were dragging her in the opposite direction, toward a waiting van. Vincenzo caught one last glimpse of her, his granddaughter, Marco's family, before they shoved him through the door to the roof access stairs. On the roof, the Queen's skyline glittered in the afternoon sun. A helicopter sat on the far side, rotors already spinning. And standing at the edge, holding Ari by one small arm, was Marcus. The driver. The man Vincenzo had trusted with his life for 15 years. The man who'd probably driven Marco to his death. "Hello, boss," Marcus said over the rotor noise. "Sorry it had to end this way, but business is business." "Where's Pharaoh?"
Vincenzo demanded.
"Change of plans," Marcus smiled. "See, Pharaoh thinks he's taking over your empire, but I've got other ideas. With you dead, Pharaoh compromised, and the Ruggieri's in federal custody thanks to Marco's evidence, which I'll be keeping. By the way, someone needs to step up. Someone who knows all your secrets. Someone who's been planning this for a very, very long time." He'd been played, not just by Pharaoh, but by a man he'd trusted even more. "Let the child go," Vincenzo said. She's 4 years old. She has nothing to do with this. She has everything to do with this. She's leverage. With her, you'll sign over everything, your businesses, your accounts, your connections. You'll legitimize my takeover, and then he shrugged. Accidents happen on rooftops. Ari was crying, reaching for Vincenzo with her free hand. And in that moment, looking at Marco's eyes in that little girl's face, Vincenzo made his choice. He'd spent his whole life building an empire on blood and fear. He'd lost his wife, his son, and nearly lost the only family he had left. No more. Okay, Vincenzo said. You win. I'll sign whatever you want. Just let me hold her first. Let me say goodbye. Marcus hesitated, calculating odds. Then he nodded and pushed Ari toward Vincenzo. The moment Ari was in his arms, Vincenzo ran. Not toward the helicopter. Toward the edge of the roof. Toward the fire escape 3 feet below the edge, the one he'd spotted the moment he stepped onto the roof.
He jumped.
Vincenzo hit the fire escape hard, his body absorbing the impact to protect Ari. Pain exploded through his ribs, but he kept moving, taking the metal stairs 3 at a time while bullets sparked off the railing above him. Get him, Marcus screamed. Don't let him reach the ground. But Vincenzo had navigated fire escapes in his youth, had run from police and rivals across rooftops, just like these. Age had slowed him, but desperation gave him speed. He reached the second-floor landing and kicked through a window into someone's storage unit, glass shattering around them. Ari clung to his neck, sobbing but silent, smart enough to know screaming would give away their position. It's okay, Piccola, he whispered in Italian, the endearment his own mother had used. Grandfather has you. You're safe now. He heard boots pounding down the fire escape.
No time.
He grabbed a tarp from the storage unit and wrapped Ari in it, tucking her behind a stack of boxes. Stay here, he commanded gently. Don't move. Don't make a sound. When it's safe, a man named Tony will come for you. Only Tony. You remember him? She nodded, terrified. Brava ragazza. He kissed her forehead and felt something wet.
Blood.
His blood, from a cut above his eye he hadn't noticed. I love you, Ari. Tell your mama. Tell her Marco was right about everything. Then he ran, leading Marcus's men away from his great-granddaughter. 2 floors down, Vincenzo burst into the main corridor just as Tony emerged from a stairwell, the tablet still secured in his jacket. Their eyes met, a lifetime of loyalty communicated in a single glance. Ari's on 3, East Wing, blue door, behind boxes, Vincenzo said rapidly. Get her out.
Get the evidence to Chen.
Finish what Marco started. Boss. That's an order, Tony. My last 1 inch. He pressed something into Tony's hand, the silver key from Elena's chain. Give this to Lena.
Tell her. Tell her she was always family.
Always. Gunfire erupted from the stairs. No more time. Tony ran toward the 3rd floor. Vincenzo ran toward the front entrance, toward the sunlight, toward the FBI vehicles that had just pulled up, real ones this time, Assistant Director Chen herself stepping out. Chen.
Vincenzo shouted.
Marcus Delgado is your mole. He's on the roof with a helicopter, trying to extract. Chen's eyes widened. She started barking orders into her radio. Units to the roof, block all exits, ground the helicopter. But Marcus had always been 3 steps ahead. The helicopter was already lifting off, banking hard toward the East River. And rappelling down from the storage facility roof came Matteo and 4 other contractors, weapons drawn. The parking lot exploded into chaos. FBI agents took cover behind vehicles. Matteo's men returned fire with military precision. Civilians screamed and ran. And in the middle of it all, Vincenzo saw Lena being dragged toward a van by 2 men in fake FBI gear. No more running. No more hiding. Vincenzo Moretti had built his empire on decisive action, on doing what others wouldn't. He'd always known how his story would end. Violent, bloody, probably alone. But he'd be damned if he'd let his family suffer for his sins. He charged. No weapon, no backup, Just an old man running toward armed contractors with nothing but rage and love propelling him forward. The first man turned too late. Vincenzo's shoulder caught him in the chest, driving him into the van's side panel. The second raised his gun, but Vincenzo was already inside his guard, grabbing the weapon, turning it. The gun fired. Once, twice. Both contractors went down. Lena stared at him in shock.
Vincenzo. Go.
Tony Hazari. Run. She ran. Vincenzo turned to face Matteo, who'd broken off from the main fight, his expression twisted with rage. You should have stayed down, old man. Pharaoh wanted you alive, but I'll settle for dead. Where is Pharaoh? Vincenzo demanded, his stolen gun pointed at Matteo's chest. Around them, the FBI was overwhelming the remaining contractors. The helicopter was circling back, Marcus making a last desperate attempt at extraction. Right here. The voice came from behind. Vincenzo turned to find Pharaoh emerging from the storage facility, hands raised, walking toward the FBI with a smug expression. Assistant Director Chen, Pharaoh called out. I'm here to surrender myself into federal custody. I wish to negotiate a deal in exchange for testimony against Vincenzo Moretti and the trafficking operations run by the Ruggieri family. The bastard was flipping, trying to save himself by burying everyone else. He poisoned my son.
Vincenzo roared.
He ran the trafficking operations. The evidence. What evidence?
Pharaoh smiled.
The tablet? The one that conveniently appeared after Marco's death? Who's to say you didn't fabricate it to frame me? After all, you're the one who's been running this organization for 40 years. I'm just an employee who followed orders. Chen looked between them, calculating. We'll sort this out at the federal building. Both of you are coming in for questioning. No, Vincenzo's voice was absolute. This ends now. Here. He raised the gun. Not at Pharaoh. At the helicopter, which was now hovering directly overhead, Marcus leaning out to provide covering fire for Matteo's escape. Vincenzo fired 6 shots in rapid succession. 3 hit the tail rotor. The helicopter spun, losing stability. Marcus's face appeared in the open door, shocked, as he realized what Vincenzo had done. The aircraft tilted, rotors screaming, and began its inevitable descent toward the empty parking lot.
No.
Matteo screamed, running toward it. Stay back. Chun ordered, but Matteo wasn't listening. The helicopter hit the asphalt and exploded in a ball of orange flame. The shockwave knocked everyone down. When Vincenzo's vision cleared, he saw Matteo on his knees, staring at the inferno that had consumed his uncle's right-hand man. Pharaoh's smug expression had vanished. Without Marcus to corroborate his story, without the muscle to enforce his takeover, he was just another criminal facing life in prison. The tablet, Vincenzo said to Chen, his ears ringing from the explosion.
Tony has it.
Everything Marco collected, trafficking routes, financial records, names of everyone involved, including recordings of Pharaoh personally selecting victims. That's a lie. Is it? Vincenzo pulled out his phone, the one he'd been recording on since the rooftop. Because I've got Marcus on tape explaining the whole operation. How you poisoned Marco. How you plan to frame me. How you've been running trafficking operations for 6 years. It was a bluff. The recording wouldn't have captured anything useful in all that chaos. But Pharaoh didn't know that. The man's face crumbled. All his planning. All his betrayals. All for nothing. Vincenzo Moretti, Chen said, approaching with handcuffs. You're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. I know my rights, he held out his wrists calmly. And I'm prepared to cooperate fully. Every business operation, every connection, every crime I've ever committed. In exchange for protection for my family. Witness protection for Lena Torres and Ariana Torres. New identities, new lives far from all this. That's a conversation for lawyers. That's the only conversation we're having. Otherwise, you get nothing. Pharaoh goes down, sure. But everyone else in my organization? They disappear. The empire continues under new management. Is that what you want? Chen stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. We'll talk. But first, where's the child? As if summoned, Tony appeared from the building, carrying Ari. Behind him, Lena ran toward them, tears streaming. Baby. Oh God, baby. Mother and daughter reunited in the parking lot while smoke rose from the burning helicopter. Vincenzo watched them, handcuffed and surrounded by federal agents, and felt something he hadn't felt in decades.
Peace.
Marco's evidence would bring down Ferro and the Ruggieris. The trafficking operation would end, and Lena and Ari would finally be safe, free from the violence that had defined the Moretti family for generations. Can I say goodbye? He asked Chen. She hesitated, then nodded. 1 minute. They brought him to Lena, who was checking Ari for injuries with practiced medical efficiency. When she saw Vincenzo, she stood. You saved her. Marco saved her first. I just finished the job. He looked at Ari, who peered at him from behind her mother's legs. You were very brave today, Piccola. Just like your uncle Marco. Will you go to jail? Ari asked with the blunt honesty of childhood.
Yes.
For a long time. But you'll be safe. That's all that matters. But we're family now, Ari said, her eyes, Marco's eyes, filling with tears. Family stays together. Vincenzo knelt down, ignoring the FBI agent's warning to stay back. Sometimes family means letting go. Letting the people you love have better lives than you could give them. He pulled off his wedding ring, Elena's ring, and pressed it into Lena's hand. This belonged to your grandmother. She'd want you to have it. Vincenzo. Time's up, Chen said, pulling him back. As they led him toward the federal vehicles, Vincenzo looked back one last time. Lena held Ari close, both of them watching him leave. The last of his bloodline. The family he'd found just in time to lose them. But they were alive. They were safe. And that, finally, was enough. 6 months later, the federal case against Ferro and the Ruggieri organization concluded with convictions on all counts. Human trafficking, racketeering, murder, the charges filled pages. Ferro would spend the rest of his life in a supermax prison. Don Ruggieri died of a heart attack 3 weeks into his trial, taking some secrets to his grave, but leaving enough evidence behind to dismantle his entire operation. Vincenzo Moretti's testimony had been the keystone that held the prosecution's case together. In exchange, the federal government had granted him a reduced sentence, 15 years instead of life. At his age, it was still a death sentence, just a slower one. But Lena and Ari were free. The Witness Protection Program had relocated them to a small coastal town in Oregon, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where the biggest crime was teenagers spray painting the water tower, where a single mother and her daughter could simply be neighbors instead of targets. Vincenzo received updates through his lawyer. Ari's health was improving. The stress reduction and clean ocean air had stabilized her condition. She might not need another transplant after all. She'd started kindergarten and loved it. She was learning to swim. Lena had found work at the local hospital, using her nursing skills in the emergency department. She'd made friends, joined a book club, started dating a high school teacher named David who coached Little League and had never heard of the Moretti family. They were living the life Marco had wanted for them. On a gray October morning, Vincenzo's lawyer visited with unusual news. There's been a development, James Chen said, no relation to Assistant Director Chen, just coincidental shared heritage. Your great-granddaughter's medical team ran routine tests last month. Her condition has deteriorated. She needs a transplant within the next 3 months. Vincenzo's heart stopped. But you said she was improving. She was. But her body is ultimately rejecting Marco's marrow. It bought her time, but not enough. James pulled out papers. The National Marrow Registry found no matches. Family members are the best option, but Lena isn't compatible. They need someone with your specific genetic markers. They need me.
Yes.
The Bureau is willing to facilitate a medical furlough under heavy guard. You donate the marrow, then return to custody. It's highly unusual, but given your cooperation and the circumstances. When? Next week. The procedure needs to happen soon.
Vincenzo nodded slowly.
He'd been prepared to die in prison without seeing his family again. This was a gift he didn't deserve. Tell them yes. Whatever they need from me, the answer is yes. The coastal town of Brookings, Oregon, was everything New York wasn't: quiet, clean, impossibly peaceful. Vincenzo saw it only through the tinted windows of a federal transport van, wrists shackled, 2 U.S. Marshals watching his every move. The hospital was small but modern. They'd brought in specialists from Portland, turned a private wing into a secure medical facility just for this procedure. All for a 4-year-old girl who'd been caught in the crossfire of men's violence and ambition. Lena was waiting in the consultation room, looking different than he remembered. Healthier. Happier. The shadows under her eyes were gone. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, civilian clothes, normal life clothes. Vincenzo. She stood when he entered, then seemed unsure whether to hug him or keep her distance. The shackles made the decision for her. You look well, he said. This place agrees with you. It's not New York, she smiled sadly, but it's home. Or it's becoming home. An awkward silence stretched between them. Family, but strangers. Connected by blood and tragedy, but separated by choices and consequences. How is she? Vincenzo asked finally. Scared. Excited. Confused about why her great-grandfather lives so far away and can only visit with police, Lena's voice cracked. I've tried to explain in ways a 5-year-old can understand, but she knows I'm a bad man who did bad things. She knows your family who made mistakes. There's a difference. Lena reached across the table, stopping just short of touching his shackled hands. She wants to see you before the procedure. If you're willing. I'm willing. They brought him to Ari's room under guard. The little girl sat in a hospital bed that seemed to swallow her tiny frame, wearing pajamas covered in cartoon starfish. She was taller than 6 months ago, her hair longer, still painfully thin, but her eyes, Marco's eyes, were bright with intelligence and curiosity. Hi, Grandpa Vinny, she said. Marco's nickname for him, passed down through stories.
Ello, piccola.
You've grown. Mama says you're going to make me better. That you're giving me your special cells. That's right. The doctors will take some of my bone marrow and give it to you. It will help you be strong. Will it hurt? The question was small, frightened. Vincenzo wanted to lie, to comfort her. But he'd spent his life lying and had destroyed everything he'd loved. So he told the truth.
Yes.
For both of us. But sometimes the things worth having hurt first, like building strong muscles or learning something difficult. The pain means we're getting better. Ari considered this with the seriousness only children possess. Then she held out her pinky finger. Promise you'll be okay? Mama says promises are important. Vincenzo hooked his pinky with hers, the shackles clinking softly. I promise. And you promise to be brave. I promise. The marshals gave them 5 more minutes. Vincenzo used them wisely, asking about school, about her friends, about the ocean she could see from her bedroom window. Normal grandfather questions. Normal family conversation. When they came to take him for pre-op, Ari called out one last time. Grandpa. Daddy Marco visits me sometimes. In my dreams. He says you're a good man who forgot how to be good. But you're remembering now. Vincenzo's vision blurred. Your daddy was smarter than all of us. The bone marrow extraction was excruciating, needles drilling into his hip bone, drawing out the precious cells that might save Ari's life. Vincenzo bore it silently, thinking of Marco, of Elena, of all the pain he'd caused in his life and the small amount of good he might finally do. The transplant was successful. Within weeks, Ari's body accepted the new marrow. Her counts improved. Color returned to her cheeks. The doctors cautiously used the word remission. Vincenzo returned to federal prison in upstate New York and resumed his sentence. But something had changed. Other inmates noticed it. The old man who'd once ruled the city now spent his time writing letters, mentoring younger prisoners, teaching them about the choices that led him here and the choices they could still make. He corresponded with Lena weekly. She sent photos. Ari on her first day of first grade. Ari learning to ride a bike. Ari in a school play dressed as a tree. A normal childhood. A safe childhood. 2 years into his sentence, Vincenzo received special permission for a visitor who wasn't his lawyer. Lena brought Ari, now 7, healthy, vibrant, for 1 hour in the prison visiting room. "I'm getting married," Lena said. To David. "He's a good man. He wants to adopt Ari, give her his name. I wanted you to know. To give your, I don't know, blessing? Permission?" "You don't need my permission to be happy," Vincenzo said. "You have my blessing. Both of you deserve all the happiness this world can give." Ari had drawn him a picture, a stick-figure family standing in front of a house by the ocean. In the sky, 2 angels watched over them. One labeled Daddy Marco, the other labeled Grandma Elena. "I put them in heaven together," Ari explained. "So Daddy isn't lonely, and so they can both watch over us." "That's perfect, Piccola." "That's exactly right." When their hour ended, Ari hugged him fiercely. "I love you, Grandpa Vinny. I love you too. More than you'll ever know." On the 3-year anniversary of Marco's death, Vincenzo received a letter from Lena with a photograph enclosed. It showed her standing at Marco's grave. They'd made a special trip back to New York, breaking witness protection protocol just for this moment. The grave was covered in fresh flowers. Purple irises, the same kind they'd left that rainy night when everything changed. The letter read, "Dear Vincenzo, we came to say thank you to Marco for saving Ari's life twice, once with his marrow, once with his evidence. And to you for finishing what he started, for choosing us over your empire. Ari wanted me to tell you that she learned about DNA in school. She knows now what it means that you're family. She knows you gave her the gift of life, just like Marco did. She says when she grows up, she wants to be a doctor, so she can save people too. The witness protection program is ending next year. We're keeping the new names, the new life, but we'll be free to travel. Ari wants to visit you. She wants you to meet her little brother. I'm pregnant, due in March. David and I are naming him Marcus Vincent, after the 2 men who saved my daughter's life. You told me once that sometimes family means letting go, but maybe it also means holding on to what matters. You'll always be family, Vincenzo. Distance and prison walls can't change that. With love, Lena." Vincenzo read the letter 3 times, then carefully folded it and placed it in the Bible Elena had given him 40 years ago, the only possession he'd kept from his old life. That night, he dreamed of Marco. His son sat beside him on a bench overlooking the ocean, young and healthy and smiling. "You did good, Dad," Marco said. "I'm proud of you. I destroyed everything we built."
"No."
"You saved everything that mattered. Lena's happy. Ari's healthy. They're free." That was always the goal, Marco stood, offering his hand. "The empire's gone, but the family lives on. That's the legacy that counts." Vincenzo took his son's hand. "I miss you. I know. But I'm not really gone. I'm in Ari's eyes. In her courage. In the choices she'll make because of the example you set, both the bad choices that taught her what not to do, and the good ones that showed her it's never too late to change." The dream faded, but the peace remained. Vincenzo Moretti died 4 years later, at age 73, of heart failure. He'd lived long enough to meet his great-great-grandson Marcus Vincent, to see Ari graduate middle school with honors, to walk Lena through her nursing degree celebration over a video call. His funeral was small, just Lena, Ari, David, and little Marcus. No criminal empire. No soldiers. No violence. Just family, saying goodbye to a man who'd spent his life building the wrong things and his final years trying to make it right. They buried him beside Marco and Elena, the family reunited at last. On his headstone, beneath his name and dates, Lena had inscribed words from his final letter to her. "Some men leave empires. I leave only love. That is enough." And in that small cemetery, on a hill overlooking the city he'd once ruled through fear, Vincenzo Moretti finally found the peace that had eluded him in life. His empire was dust. His family was free. And that, in the end, was everything.